Alright, this is a video I've been meaning to make for a while now, but every time I did a recreation, I would forget that I wanted to make this video, and then I would just not make it. I remembered this time, and of course I chose like the worst possible thing for this, but fine. I totally knew about this in advance, and I totally am not finding this out the hard way right now. But anyway, here's how you recreate. First things first, you got your instant voices, presumably. Normally, if this were any other song, the voices would have, the voices, and it wouldn't be all in the inst file. But because this song, Try and Trong, that's the name of the song, this song is unfortunately, apparently from what I've heard, the Nexus lost like the FOP/FLM for it, and so they just kind of had to go with this. Not great, not a great thing to be working with here, but ordinarily you'd be working with something better. But the first thing you do is you click on this little button here. I think my mouse should be captured, so I think you can see where I'm clicking. And you go over to where it says sample, extract stems from sample, extract all this stuff. You could limit the CPU usage if you plan to do something else in the background. Extract. This will take a little bit, especially because the song is like 5 minutes. Alright, so as you can see, we've got the drums, which let's hear those real quick. Alright, and then we got the bass. And we got the instruments, which unfortunately I think do include the vocals because this stem splitter thing isn't that smart. So, if memory serves me in situations like this, I think there is alternative stem splitter thingies you can use that aren't as iffy, like in terms of like putting the vocals in the instruments for FNF stuff, which give me 1 second to find that. So I think you go here, and then you'd click browse my files, and then you'd click on the instrumental file here in this instance. So you do that, and then it has to process it again. This one does use AI. It's not generative, I suppose, so I guess it's not like a bad thing, at least, but like, obviously I know that's probably a turn off for some of you, but it's not a turn off for me, because like I said, it's not generative AI, it's not creating any bullshit, so I think this one did the same thing, actually. So anyway, we got our stuff here now, and the thing that you choose to recreate first is very much up to you on what you want to do. But for me, what I usually do is I recreate the drums and bass first, just because it usually gets these separated decently, and it's kind of hard to mess up, especially the drums, because like, I'm gonna be so for real, if you mess up the drums, I don't think you're cut out for this, bro. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. So obviously we had to figure out the BPM still, which shouldn't be too bad, because we have this trick called looking at the chart. So let's do that real quick.
I'm Sponge.
Hello, Try and Trong. What is the BPM of this song? 123. Let's see. Alright, I'm pretty sure the song does get faster, I believe. Yeah, it does. Okay. Alright, I'll just trust that it changes on this beat here, so for BPM changes, what I usually do is we cut it up first, as you saw earlier, and then we make all of these things unique. And then we click on the first things, and then we change them all to be stretch. This basically just makes it so that when you change the BPM, it won't like mess with anything here. So this will say like completely still, but then everything else here will move. Which, since there is a BPM change, we gotta look at the chart again and see where that change is. Oh wait, did they just wing it? Okay, there we go. 190. So do this, and then we click on the init song in this position thing, just so that way the automation clip doesn't mess anything up too badly. And then we just move this down to some arbitrary number and just lock that one with shift click. So let's go ahead and get the drums down at least, just because that shouldn't be too hard, like I said. So this song uses like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's definitely like a drum kit, but I have never heard a drum kit that has samples quite like this in my life, especially if this is made on mobile. I have no fucking idea what drums these are, but for now, here's what I'll do, because my recreations aren't ever one-to-one, and some people like that, I'm pretty sure a lot more people don't. I don't really care, but Mixer's Mega Genesis Drum Pack. This should be available to find somewhere on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not on YouTube, it should just be able to be found if you just look up Mixer's Mega Genesis Drum Pack, and then you put version and then some number, because there's like a lot of versions. I don't even think V8's the most recent version. I'm half certain it's like V10. I just haven't checked. Once you do that, then what I do is I just look up kick, and then I just kind of like scroll for a little bit, and no, definitely not. Decent. Alright, let's go with this one, Galaxy Force. I'll probably cut out, ignore that. I probably cut out most of what I was doing there, but it really is that tedious. You just kind of have to keep listening to drum samples until you find one that you like, which for Genesis drums especially, I'm not gonna lie, dude, it's like really just the sonic drums that are like consistently really good. But that's neither here nor there. Alright, now we gotta do the hats, because that's the most relevant thing right now. You also get a glance into how I usually mix stuff, I guess, which is nice. Okay, so we got this is on 21, and then we route it to 20. Okay, yeah. Then we got this thing, which I messed with this output setting because that moves it to 23, if I'm not mistaken, which is where I want it to be. And then we just gotta find some hat sounds that don't suck, which again, big ask for the Genesis, but I'll give it a fair shot. Honestly, not a bad open hat. Okay, I think I immediately found the samples I wanted. And then we also need a crash, which will be on the same channel as the hats, just because the way it's going to be mixed is identical to them, so there's not really much point in putting it on a separate thing. Okay, I guess Galaxy Force, if no one got me, I know Galaxy Force got me. I guess I'll give a little sneak peek into how I mix drums right now. So I usually would do this with like Pro Q or something instead, but I don't know if everyone here has that, because I don't know who's watching this video, so. Okay, okay, let me think real quick. Oh yeah, I could do this on the bus right now. That's what I usually do. I think I've been forgetting to do it on more recent stuff, but it's whatever. And then we can add like a transient shaper thing Alright, so usually as well with these things, you want to play it like kind of safe and not like repeat patterns over and over unless you know for sure you can. Just because, like as you can see here, I was gonna put down pattern 1 again, but at the very end here they do something different with like the toms and shit, so I can't do that. So instead I'm just gonna copy paste the whole pattern and just continue it. Toms, especially, okay, so this is kind of exclusive to Genesis toms. Most of the time I would just do toms like decently normally, but with Genesis toms, what I like to do is I grab a sampler, and then obviously of course I gotta grab a tom, just any regular old high tom would do, I think. Alright, let's just go with this one from fucking Yu Yu Hakusho, bro, why not? And then the envelope will just be something like this, I think is fine. So now we got that. And I have to add the snare. Which, let me listen to the snare. Okay, very like generic snare. Hopefully that shouldn't be too hard to find, but again, I've been surprised before, so. You can also, by the way, like stack samples on top of each other. It's kind of hard to do, and I don't think I'll go too into detail about it here because I don't really need to for this song. And most of the time, you won't really want to do that. But say for example, like I like the impact of this, but I don't like the tail of it. I could like splice it up to where it's just the impact that I like, and then I could splice a different sample that I like the tail of, and we could just use that one. So I think we got that, and okay, now we just gotta continue where we left off. Okay, I think now is a good time to mention why I did mention using something like ProQ for like the mixing. So you'll see here, it looks like this, and it's pretty fucking easy to like recognize where I should cut the low end, and then I can like hover over the wave thingy-mabobber and get told like the like fundamental frequency of it, so like 86 hertz here. But it also allows me to do stuff like remove like the immediate stuff around around the kick that we don't need. And normally nowadays I just use this thing called knock, which I think does cost money, but I'll just leave it at there's definitely ways to get it without. Alright, that was a bit of messing around with the mixing, probably more than I should have in all honesty, but oh well. Hindsight is how it is, so I'll probably regret that later, but alright. I think just for the sake of time in this video, I only cover recreating the faker half, just because if I do the rest, that's gonna be a lot longer, and I feel like you get the idea just with the faker stuff alone. So after I do the drums, I do the bass, or sometimes it's bass and then drums, or sometimes it's voices and drums. You get the idea. It doesn't matter. Admittedly, this bass I have no real idea how to immediately recreate, just because it's very unique and it's like Nexus's style, honestly, I'd argue. But it is very, very Genesis build, so I will mess with this synth VST I have that does something like that. This is actually like driving me insane. I don't understand why it doesn't sound right. Okay. This is a rare circumstance to be in where I just have no fucking idea what the hell I'm listening to. But, thankfully, having done this for as long as I have, I do have a backup for this. That backup is just doing some recreating of the vocals, because the vocals are pretty easy to notice if they're off tune, and it's pretty easy to tell when they're on tune. Okay, now I'm decently confident. I think I know where the song's master pitch is at. No issues, I still don't know why it feels like it's off tune. I think right now I'll just worry about chromatic stuff. I've given a tutorial on how to make chromatics like a billion times, I think. But first, we open up our own little FOP just for this because we're lazy. And then next thing we do is we open up Audacity. If you don't know where to get Audacity, just look it up. Don't get it from MuseHub. Just get the exe version. It's much better. All right, let's listen to those again. Alright, let's see if those work. Honestly, you can tell I've done a lot of those because I didn't really think about it at all that I was doing that in recording. So when I do this nowadays, I usually cut off like the initial beginning point because that usually has some shenanigans going on with the pitch. Maybe if you're like a really good singer, it won't have anything too crazy, but like I've noticed that usually is what happens. So I cut off the first little chunk of it usually. And then once I do that, I do a slight bit of like vocal cleanup. I don't know what to describe it as. I have these things that like clean up the audio. So I just use them, and it usually takes like a minute. And then I just normalize it, each individual one. The next thing we do is we then click pitch correct sample, where we like went to there before. And then these settings, what you'll want to change here kind of depends. I mean, well, no, hold on. Trans, turn that down because what this does is like it makes the transitions between each pitch like smoother. But since this is supposed to be an instrument and not like lyrics or anything, this is completely useless and will only get in the way. Center does what it says, it centers it. So as you can see, I was like kind of off pitch a little bit, and then we do center and boom, now it's on pitch. And then variation is the one that will really depend on the samples in question. Because ideally, you want to have like a fair amount of variation just to make the chromatic not sound, I guess like boring is the best way to phrase it. I don't want to describe it. It makes it sound neato. And this cut mode thing here as well in the top right is your best friend. You can press C to activate it, like just off a keyboard shortcut, which you can kind of see barely working here. Usually what I do is I select everything and then I control click, and then that'll fuse them all together, and then I splice them back up again, and then from there we just tune. But yeah, so once you move all those samples down, you control A, control C, and then you control V, and then it does this for some reason, I don't know why, and then you just move that all back up, control A again, and then you just keep doing this until we get to, for a chromatic like this, I would usually stop at like C8 up here. But usually C7 is enough, but since this chromatic samples were at C5, it can go a lot higher and not sound super terrible. So I am gonna take advantage of that, even though it does make exporting the chromatic take a lot longer, but it's fine. Alright, so as you heard, there was like a weird amount of low end there. What I usually do is I EQ out the lows by going to the lowest note and then letting it play. I'm going to turn this down, honestly. Letting it play, seeing what it is, and then, so like here, I'll just cut it off, cut everything below 196, just because there's nothing really underneath that. And that's how you handle the lows. And then, because this might just be a thing with my mic, or maybe I'm just not as good at vocals as I think I am, but then I usually put something like Soothe 2 on it. I know most of you probably won't have this. I don't even remember where I got this, but I do have it. And I think usually just the default setting should work fine. Maybe like just remove a bit of that. But like this should be fine. This should get like everything you want it to get. Which if you don't know what Suv 2 does, it's kind of hard to really describe without getting into really technical terms, but if there's like ringing, so if a song has too many frequencies in one part, it'll sound like it's sort of like ringing in your ears, I guess is the only way I can really describe it, or like whistling even. It's kind of hard to really describe it. Like, point is, if it hurts your ears, it's not a good sound. And this basically like automatically gets rid of those sorts of sounds for you. On paper, it is a bit more complicated on what it actually does, and there are ways you can do it with just an EQ, but you got me so fucked up you think I'm doing all that. But yeah, Suv 2. And then just to make stuff a little bit easier, and add frequency limiter, and I put it at like 6 decibels, and then we just like crank this all the way up. Maybe not all the way up. Let's see. Whatever. It doesn't matter. This is basically just so that way it'll all be like a big block of audio pretty much, which is decent enough to where it's kind of ignorable that it might be kind of bad in hindsight, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I like how chromatics that do this sound a lot more than chromatics that don't. But yeah, then you grab Edison. If you don't own Newtone, if yours says trial version like mine, then you will need to grab Edison, click record on here, and then you'll have to just sit here and wait. Well, not here, you can obviously do stuff in the background. Sit here and wait for it to record the entire thing, which will obviously take a long while, like 10 minutes maybe. Or alternatively, if you do own Newtone, if yours doesn't say trial version up here, I believe you can just save as, or you can send a playlist and then export it, or you can drag select and then export it. You get it. It's a lot easier that way though, and it takes a lot less time than it does here. Thankfully though, you can turn down the main volume to like 1% or even 0% if you want, and just kind of sit here and wait without your ears begging for mercy. I'll let that do its thing. Okay, I'm back after a little bit. Messed with the pitch a little bit more, so now I'm pretty certain I've got it right. I fucking hope to God I'm right about that, because I'm so sick of messing with this shit. But yeah, that chromatic got finished, so here's how that sounds. I don't know how my voice sounds like that in all honesty, because it doesn't have any pitch changes messing with it. It's just how it sounds. Oh well. But I'm recording now. I wanted to show y'all how I do the lines usually. So, as you know, probably in this song we got so he's like laughing high pitch, and then he's laughing low pitch, and then he's like, oh shit, wait, I'm about to fucking die. You will have to bear with me here. So what I typically do is I will mute like the voices pretty much. Okay, on this one I probably won't mute the voices just because it has an odd timing that I have to nail. Lower the volume just so it doesn't distract me, just so I can hear myself actually doing the thing. And then go ahead and just record and just try my best. I do like a few takes of it, so let's go ahead and do a few takes of that. Oh shit, wait! Honestly, that first one might have been good enough to where maybe that can just be used on its own. I don't know. I just don't want to do it again on recording at the very least. I'll probably do it again in my own time. It just doesn't have to be a big deal. So yeah, then I do my usual that I do for like chromatics, where I do like dialogue isolate and whatever. Okay, now we export that. Onibog, transgender. And then we grab it, we put it in there. And then we line it up as best we can. And now, honestly, this is a good time to actually go into it, because I realize now I didn't actually Because I realize now I didn't actually go into detail on how I recreate like voice effects. It is kind of just like know-how, and like you hear an effect and then you're like, oh yes, it sounds like this, so I'm gonna do that. So first things first, I think every single song has the same like generic list of effects, so I will do that at least. I think there's like a demon voice effect on that, which usually is done with Grellian too. Why is that like not audible? Am I crazy? Oh wait, that's one. And now I gotta use my ears real quick on how he sounds in the song. I wanna say that's like some amount of distortion. It's at least like overdrive, I think. It's at least overdrive, and it might be like destructor for all I know. He's also just like a lower pitch in general, so let's go back here. Let's go ahead and put all these to stretch just for making my life easier. And let's do this for like, I don't know, 400. Cool, and then I think I gotta get the fucking like the sound of like fucking the like baby gasping and like the wiggling thing. I don't even know what the hell that sound is. Okay, that took me way too long, but I got something there at least, so oh well. When you can't complain, you can't complain, I suppose. Okay, last bit of the tutorial. I did obviously do a little bit of it without recording, but it's fine. So, instrumental. This was obviously a lot harder than it should have been because of the fact that the instrumental was also the vocals. But I kind of did just wing it for the most part. Like, this is probably not accurate at all, but it at least sounds good, so I don't really care as long as it doesn't like sound empty or anything, it's fine. So the first thing I noticed was this thing. And then the second thing I noticed was that it sounded empty, so then I added in some chords in the background here. And then I noticed that here it adds a lot of instruments, but of course I can barely hear most of them. Like, I know there's some sort of square doing something here, but I have no idea what it's doing here. I just kind of added an arpeggio here to like just make it seem like something's happening. And then there was like a sawtooth thing, like doing a little solo in the background of this part. It didn't sound anything like it does here, but it is present, so it technically is accurate, you know? And then there was like some ambient thing in the background of the transformation. But anyway, I'll let the actual part like just play out in its entirety now. I also made like the sandy chromatic, obviously. It's probably gonna get a remake because it sounds a bit too similar to the sponge, so it's a bit hard to tell who's who sometimes. But let's just listen to this. So yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to say on recreations. There's probably more, and I feel like editing this is gonna be a fucking nightmare, but oh well. We'll see. And if there is more, then editing me will have his work cut out for him, let's just say. Hi, it's me, the editor. I don't know how I forgot to do this, but you remember how I said I was gonna talk about like the mixing, and then I kind of just like didn't. First things first, what did I do with the vocals? Well, first things first, what I did with the master. All I did on the master for now is just put this thing on it just to make it not go over 0 decibels. Does it technically go over 0 decibels? I guess, but it doesn't go into the red, and I like that. And it's also still loud, and I also like that. But anyway, so the drums. First of all, I gotta turn down that reverb. That reverb is aggressive. Alright, yeah, so this thing, I mentioned how ProQ lets me see the sub, and then I didn't mention that I decided to move it over to the left a bit more instead of having it on like 85 or whatever, just because that sub frequency is important. And I upped this part here to make the attack a bit stronger, and then I upped this bit here just to give it some sparkle. And then that guy, I guess, is just there because, I don't know, I invited him and I forgot to tell him to leave. And then this knock thing, what it does, so here I gave it some punch, which means like the initial hit of it is stronger. It's slightly saturated, which I don't really understand how that works all too well. All I know is it makes it sound better. That's kind of all I could say on it. And then the sub is on B, just because it can be. That's technically off pitch if you want to be that guy, but also I don't care. It still sounds fine. It has a fair amount of air just to, again, make the hit like noticeable in the mix. And then of course it's clipped to like not fucking be like aggressively like super doob or omega loud. The snare, this one's kind of a mess. Obviously we cut out the low end and then we boosted the like snare part of it, I guess you could say. I don't know. I probably should cut out a bit more of the low just because there's that little bump there that's probably messing something up, but I don't really care. But yeah, same sort of thing as what I did with the kick. We got this thing going up because it makes the attack stronger, and we got this thing going up because it adds some nice little sparkle to it. And then kind of the same settings here, just with less air and no sub because there's no sub on this. And yeah, then that's kind of the same. I didn't clip it ever. This is just an EQ, just cut out the low end, and then boosted up this a little bit, and then did the same thing here again. And then this is only the transient shaper, which is a mistake. I forgot that I was supposed to do a little bit more with that. So I can walk through this right now, honestly. So yeah, once again we cut out this low end here. Boost this, then we kind of cut out this a little bit, and we boost around 5 kilohertz, cut like a little bit of 1K, and then of course we'll reliable we do this. But yeah, as you can also notice, the crashes are panned sometimes with this thing. That's how the drums were mixed, and then the vocals, I think they're mixed identically if I remember correctly. So first things first, we just got OTT. I think I messed with this time thing a little bit for a reason, but I don't notice anything in the mix, so I don't actually know what I'm doing there. And then default fruity flying us at like 50%, and then this might be controversial, but I don't really know. We do this where we add Maximus, and then we add Threshold, and then the ceiling on the saturation, and then we boost the input, so that way it like is like hard capped at something essentially. And then after that we add the EQ. So I cut out most of the high because that's what the original did, and I'm trying to, this is still a recreation at the end of the day. Ordinarily I would keep it like present, but I decided not to. And then yeah, boosted fundamentals and whatnot. I think Fake Bob has, yeah, just kind of only has this because I was lazy. But they do both have this thing going on. This thing looks scary, but it's not that scary. So first things first, this peak limiter thing is on multi-band because, I don't know, I think it sounds fine. And then the threshold is kind of just reduced to a point where it's still present, but it's also still like limiting stuff. The compressor is just on fast attack, slow release, slight ratio, and then we up the gain by a fair amount just so that way the limiter can do stuff that it's supposed to. This thing, this guy, I haven't added any vocals for him yet other than the transformation, but he does have slight distortion that's at 70%. And then he's got this thing where I turn this pitch shift down all the way, I preserve a little bit of the format, which I think means that it'll still sound like the character, but it won't, it'll be like just 12 semitones down. But yeah, he's got all the same things, and then this delay is just kind of here, doing his best. And that's how you end up with stuff that sounds like this. And then you got the bass, which I skipped over a lot of that because a lot of it was just me fumbling around with it, and then I found out at the end that I didn't even have it on like the right notes at all after I figured out the fucking master pitch thing. So it was just completely wrong, it sucked, and everything about it sucked, and I hated it. So first thing we have here is the sub, which is just 3 times oscillator on the sine wave with these the other two things turned down all the way. And it's at -2 octaves. And it's also got this going on. And you'll notice I made a cut at this little frequency here. That's because that is where the kick drum wants to be, if you remember. Okay, well, if I didn't cheap out, I probably would be there. But yeah, that's doing that. It just adds like more presence to the bass. Not really presence, what's the word? It just makes it bassier, you know, it does its job. And then you got the actual bass, which is, which one is it? It is this thing, F2 FM. This thing is pretty useful for making these sorts of Genesis sounds on your own. It's kind of hard to explain what I was doing here, but basically you got the initial oscillator, and it also has a sub thing on here. And this thing's at -1 octave, just so it matches with the sub, and it's got a modifier thingy, like this adds like FM effects to it, pretty much. They're just both on buzzy sine. There's a lot of options here. I messed with like the amp and the low pass filter in here, which isn't a traditional low pass filter. It messes with it in the FM. Like the FM changes depending on the low pass and the filters and whatnot. It's kind of hard to explain, but I don't want to mess with it right now because I'm going to forget where it was, and I'm intending to keep this here for people who want to figure out what I did. But yeah, it's only like this right now because this is a third-party thing, so it can't do slide notes naturally, and I'm too lazy to figure out how to get that bendy thing working. So what I did instead was I just made a different pattern, and then I exported a 4-measure long note of the bass, and then, you know, I just added it, you know. And it's got wider, which is a thingy McLovver that just it makes it wide as you would expect, and the low bypass is up a fair amount to make sure that that the bass is still mono while everything else isn't. And yeah, that sounds like this. And then I just didn't mention this guy at all for some reason, but when the song, like, I guess drops, you could call it, it adds in like a guitar thing. I don't know. I noticed there's like some things going on. with the bass in the parts after the drop, so I just decided to add in a little like guitar thing. But yeah, that sounds like this. And it's got a chorus effect and a stereo enhancer, and then yeah, it's got this going on. And it's also got a compressor, which is doing the same thing as the bassist compressor that I forgot to mention, where it essentially, like, what it's supposed to be doing is it compresses it, but only after the initial like sound already plays. So that way, like, you hear the sound in your ear, and then you feel the bass, I guess, afterward. And that's kind of how that works, pretty much. But yeah, that's all of them, guys. And then you got this guy, which was the first time I actually messed with this flex preset, was with just doing this. The mixing on it is just doing a bit of that. And I also added some A compressor on it just because the volume was a bit too inconsistent for my liking. This thing, which was also the first time I messed with this thing in a hot minute, because usually I use this for like making crazy sounding basses, I think. But yeah, this has got this going on. This thing's turned down because I don't know how to describe it, just sounded kind of odd with it. And then we turned up this to make it more airy, I guess. It's also got a compressor for the same reasons. It's also got stereo enhancer to make it stereo, and it's got this just to make it sound like trippy. But as you can clearly hear, there's some more stuff. This is kind of just a copy paste of the same thing from earlier, but it's still different. It's got flangus, and it's also got a phaser on it just to make it more trippy. And then you got this thing, which has flangus, and it's also got this, and it also has a trance gate, which kind of just does this to it. I think you can figure out what's happening here. And then we have this thing, which is being modified by this. So you'll notice this is messing with 13 and 12, and then on 12 I just inverted the left and right channel, so that way it's being panned opposite to where the track 13 is being paired. And this is just, my goodness, this is just, yes, Sega Sound Fun. It's just doing a bit of that. And then you have the like sawtoothy thing that is on 3X and we got on the saw and the fucking like 25% square or whatever. Yeah, it's got this going on where I clicked on pitch, and then it's got like, so basically what this means is after a little bit of it being active, it'll start doing like a vibrato effect, which you'll hear, I'm pretty sure. This is using the same effects as the vocals, if I remember correctly, just with some of the stuff removed, obviously. But other than that, it's basically the same effects, and I don't think I did anything with this. Yeah, it's just lower volume. Okay, I think that's about everything I wanted to cover with the mixing. Hopefully, that was helpful if you wanted to learn more about that. I was obviously going off of memory. I had no script there, so editing me is probably still gonna have a lot of work, but it's fine. I guess I can also mention the tiny little bit that I did do over here. Then it listens to that end bit where the instant voices are actually separated for once, so that'll be hopefully easy. And yeah, I don't know when this will be finished because I'm a fat chud, but hopefully sooner rather than later. Hopefully it doesn't take me like a month to finish, because that would suck after I made this video and got everyone all excited, but we'll see.